Hello, everybody. My name is Bruce Montgomery, and this is my colleague, Tracy Priest.
Hello, everyone.
And we're with The Road to Retail. On our podcast, Tracy and I hope to offer insights and ideas for how emerging small and challenger CPG, consumer packaged goods, brands can establish and grow their business.
Bruce and I have been working in CPG commercial operations for over 30 years, working on brands of all sizes. By commercial operations, we mean all aspects involved in establishing and growing brands across channels and platforms. On our show, we bring on guests that are brand founders, leaders, investors, as well as all kinds of suppliers to these emerging brands that are subject matter experts to share their unique insights with the audience.
To keep up with the show, please follow the Road to Retail podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube. Leave us a review and consider sharing the show with a friend or colleague that may benefit from the content. You can also check out our website at www.road2retail.com and follow The Road to Retail on LinkedIn. Let's get to today's episode. Since 1994, the Emerson Group has been the trusted partner to brands, retailers, suppliers, and the CPG industry. Their people are CPG professionals and omnichannel commerce experts. They have built a fully integrated infrastructure with a suite of services and capabilities focused on launching and accelerating the growth of health, wellness, and beauty brands. Powered by their proprietary Omega AI data technology platform, which utilizes a brand's insights and data analytics to create a brand's go-to-market strategy, optimize their omni-channel distribution, build marketing plans, and optimize supply chain. The Emerson Group infrastructure and capabilities serve brands in the United States, Canada, and Mexico. To learn more, visit their website at www.emersongroup.com. Looking to scale or launch your supplement or skincare brand? Eagle Labs Incorporated, based in Florida, offers full-service NSF-certified contract manufacturing of capsules, tablets, powders, liquids, gummies, and lotions. All of their manufacturing takes place in the USA. From R&D and formulation to packaging and fulfillment, Eagle Labs provides scalable, high-quality production that meets FDA and NSF standards. To learn more, contact Michael Law, Chief Commercial Officer at Eagle Labs at michael.law@eaglelabsinc.com. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of The Road to Retail. There he is, my friend and co-founder, Tracy Priest. Tracy, how are you today?
Doing fantastic today, Bruce. Thanks for asking, and I'm excited about our episode today. So why don't you tell our audience a little bit about who we have, and then we'll just jump right in.
Well, today we're joined by Leila Bahbah. She's the Director of Marketing of Opill, which is a product of the Perrigo company, and she can tell us more about the brand here in a moment. But first, I want to welcome Leila to the show and let her take a few minutes to tell us how she's progressed through her career and landed in her current seat. So Leila, thank you for your time today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to have this discussion.
All right. So as we kick off, why don't you fill in the group? And, our audience is small, emerging, challenger brands and all the kinds of suppliers that may help brands grow and investors and folks like that. So tell us a little bit about your personal background, and then we'll ease into what you're doing at Perrigo with Opill.
Okay. Well, I should start by saying that I'm from the great state of Arizona, which I feel like not that many people are from. I went to college at the University of Arizona in Tucson. That's not the party school, it's the other one, just to be clear. And from there, after school, I moved to Chicago to start my career in corporate retail. I actually spent a few years in buying before I moved into marketing. And I realized that I really loved marketing and I wanted to continue to do it. So I did what every elder millennial who wants to be taken seriously in marketing does. And I went back to school. I got my MBA from the Indiana University Kelley School of Business. Go Hoosiers. If you're into football, we had a great football season this past year, which was very exciting for all of us. And there I studied consumer marketing. So that's where I focused on making the pivot out of retail and into CPG brand management. And from there, I went to work for General Mills in the Twin Cities, which was a great training ground. I don't know what people know about General Mills, but they really put you through the gauntlet. And they have these robust training programs that build very strategic and well-rounded marketers. So I spent several years there working on a variety of different businesses, big heritage brands like Pillsbury and the Green Giant, to some of the smaller natural and organic businesses like Annie's, which everybody seems to love. And then from there, I got an opportunity to come back to Chicago, which is where I was before grad school, to work for ConAgra, which is another huge food company. And the thing that I appreciate about ConAgra is that brand management there is very much a science. So I was able to really sharpen my analytical abilities and get super clear on how to leverage scanner data and different types of data and treat brand building as less of an art and more of a science. But then I got a call from a company that I thought was punking me because I had never heard of them before. And that's Perigo. This was at the start of 2020, so over 6 years now. I got a call from Perigo to explore what it would look like to join their organization and help them build their brand building capability. Now, for those who don't know or have never heard of Perigo, like I hadn't, Perigo is the largest manufacturer in the United States of private label OTC pharmaceuticals. So that's likely why you haven't heard of Perigo. But 8 or so years ago, they decided to start dabbling into the brand world. 6 years ago, that's where I come into play. They brought me on board to lead the RX to OTC switch, which means that you take a drug from being prescription to over the counter, of Nasonex, which is an allergy nasal spray. So I spent several years leading Nasonex through its FDA approval process while building the brand to be launched in the consumer landscape. And then from there, we acquired a company called HRA Pharma. And with HRA Pharma came the most incredible opportunity and an opportunity that has, quite frankly, changed my life, both personally and professionally, and that's Opill. Opill is the first over-the-counter daily birth control pill. So for the first time in US history, you don't need a prescription, you don't need to visit a doctor, you don't need health insurance to get the birth control pill. And I've spent the past 3.5 years leading the commercialization and launch of Opill alongside a team of very smart and dedicated people. I can't fully take credit here, but it's been such a joy to be able to deliver an important launch like this to the underserved but very deserving women of our country. And
Well,
that's my career in a nutshell.
Well,
That's
thanks for
awesome.
joining us today. Oh, no, there's much, much more of our discussion here to go. So that's incredible. And a couple of points, the big companies, the General Mills, the Proctors, the Nestle's. I mean, I hope they still are, but in the day, that those were the places to go cut your teeth and really
Yeah.
get ground up and learn how the business rolls. Um, Indiana as a football school, somewhere the ghost of Bob Knight is not necessarily very thrilled. And just for the record, the last football team to beat Indiana was the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. So we're just going to make sure everything's on record.
Uh,
So let's, Tracy, why don't you take it from here into the next question? Because now Leila set the table that she and the team brought Opill to the market, but let's go deeper there.
yeah, absolutely. But let's talk more about IU football. No, I'm sorry. No, let's not do that. We're going to stay on task here. So Leila, talk to us a little bit about how the Opill team went about building a community with strategic partnerships. This is really fascinating. I think our small emerging brand audience would love to hear about this because it's a very unique and different approach.
That it is. As we developed the plans for Opill and we're thinking about how do we want to launch this business and enter the market and drive awareness and create a community? Partnerships rose to the top. And all of our partnerships that we've participated in from launch until now are grounded in our shared values. And those values for us are empowerment, access, and equity. And what I mean by equity is health equity for all. And we kicked off our launch in the spring of 2024 with the announcement of our partnership with the WNBA. This was done intentionally and a very exciting move for us because the WNBA has been making history in women's sports at the same time that Opill's making history within reproductive health and the world of OTC. So it felt like a very natural fit. The other thing too, and as it relates to the WNBA, is that what I love about that league is they really listen to their players, and they take into consideration what's weighing on their players' minds, where their players want to spend their time. And that year in particular, and I believe it continues, the players were really focused on reproductive health. So that was just another really a natural fit for an alignment for Opill to partner with the WNBA. In addition to the work that we've done with them, we've also partnered with Unrivaled, which was the new women's basketball league that was started by two WNBA stars, one of which has been an Opill partner, and that's Nafisa Collier. She is a wonderful human, by the way. If you don't know who she is, she's one of the best players in the league. You should look her up. We've also done partnerships with Chill House, which is a press-on nail brand. And that might seem a little bit weird, but it was actually very thoughtful and strategic. And the reason that we wanted to partner with Chill House is because, again, we have these shared values, but also we wanted to expand how we were connecting with our community, and your beauty routine, your beauty and wellness routine is part of your everyday, just like Opill and your contraception method is a part of your everyday routine. So we were looking to really establish that, this is part of your self-care journey that you do every single day. This is bigger than women's sports, moving into the beauty space. So it's been exciting to see how we've developed this community, creating safe space for conversations, answering questions, and just connecting in very fun and different ways through our work in women's sports and in the beauty space.
I love that because you're building a community.
Well, and the WNBA is just on fire. So you guys hooked on there right as the rocket was getting ready to launch. So let's talk about educating consumers and the retailers about your product, and the actions you undertake to make sure that consumers and retailers understand the safety and efficacy of Opill. I mean, Tracy and I have been in OTC drugs at various points in our careers. And one of the things is whether it's an RX to OTC switch or even sometimes private label, there's a percentage of the population that's dubious that it's going to be as effective as the prescription. So I imagine that was at least one hurdle you had to cross. But what are your thoughts on this?
So I should take a step back and share that Opill is what's called a first-in-class switch. So there are different classifications of switches within the switch world. And a first-in-class switch means essentially that it's creating the class of drug. That's what the FDA calls it. And in layman's terms, that just means we're creating a category. So we're building both a brand and a category at the same time, which is a challenge. Quite frankly, I never thought I would have faced in my career. It's a very interesting one. An important one, but when you are creating that category, the onus is on us to educate. So education has been central throughout everything we've done with Opill. And how we've educated, I'll start with the retailers. Opill is a progestin-only pill. So it's a daily birth control pill. You take it at the same time every single day. And it actually was approved by the FDA for prescription use in 1973. So it's been around for over 50 years. The medical community, pharmacists, OBGYNs, nurse practitioners, and the like, are very familiar and comfortable with counseling patients on a POP, that's a progestin-only pill, such as Opill. So there wasn't a huge lift when it came to educating our HCPs, our pharmacists at retail, when we were presenting, the plans for the Opill launch and commercialization. The big thing was educating them that now it was going to be available over the counter without age restriction, without, being locked up or anything like that. But what we did do for those pharmacists that did feel like they needed extra support is we created really easy to understand one-page downloads that we were able to deploy to the pharmacy teams across the retail community, so that if consumers did want to pick up Opill, had some questions about it, the pharmacist was equipped in the event that they weren't as familiar with the POP. So that's the retailer side. On the consumer side, that's where we've quite frankly spent the majority of our focus. And educating has been part of everything we've done across many different channels. So I'll give you some examples. We have opill.com, where we sell the product D2C, but we've also got robust FAQs. We have articles, not just about Opill and how to use it, but reproductive health more broadly, because the conversation around Opill is just one sliver of reproductive health. And what we're trying to do here is educate more broadly across the board so that consumers can make informed choices, not just about what form of contraception is right for them, but how they should be managing their reproductive health care overall. So that's one avenue. We've relied very heavily on our partnerships. I know I talked about the W and Unrivaled and Chill House. We've also done a ton of work across college campuses. We did have a partnership last year with her campus, and that was cool because it included a media component, but then also ambassadors that were across 15 different schools that were connecting with students in person, having these conversations. And then the other piece has been social media and influencer. It's just infiltrated everything. But as we think about young women and people who can get pregnant in this country, where are they spending their time? On social. They're spending on Instagram, on Snapchat, on TikTok. And these are critical channels of communication for us. And it's not just about having fun, which we do, we put out some entertaining content. It's about leveraging those platforms to educate, giving them snackable pieces of information that then they can build up over time, again, so that we're equipping them with what they need to make informed choices about both their contraception and their health. So it's just, and it doesn't stop. We've been in market for over 2 years now, and education still remains at the forefront in all of our communications.
No, very, very, very good. Very good. So talk to our audience a little bit about what steps your team took to push back on some of the misconceptions, about the brand on social media.
There's a lot of noise in social media, right? It's like
Yes.
you got the angel on one shoulder, the devil on the other.
Right.
Wait, I thought it's all true.
Not quite. So here's what we do. If we do see any misinformation that's directly related to Opill, or we see any noise in the comments or our DMs, we will address it directly. But our focus is really about informing and educating and providing medically accurate information. It's less about sitting there trying to battle all of the noise or the misinformation that's circulating, and more about putting the truth out there and giving people the tools and the resources they need to either, they get the highlights from our social channel, but we're constantly considering you might need more expansive information and directing people to that. Another program that we developed in partnership with the WNBA and the Black Women's Health Imperative that is, probably my single most favorite thing that we've done is this health equity program called Level the Court. And that was a great education vehicle. It was because we developed a microsite within the WNBA, so you're getting a lot of eyeballs on this. We're also working with the Black Women's Health Imperative to educate across their channels. We created a fund, the Opill and BWHI fund, for women and people who can get pregnant to access the product, should they not at that time in their life have the financial means to access it. And we also, as part of our campus efforts, we did an HBCU focus tour where we were interacting and putting on programming with these college students so that we were able to educate and connect and continue to build the community that way. So we're always looking for ways to educate, to tackle misinformation, but in a way that's authentic to us, that's focused coming from the positive versus coming from the negative.
So you don't want to make it confrontational in any way. You want to make it like, oh, I have a question or I have a concern, and then you really are addressing that with education, not you
Yes.
don't know what you're talking about, because that usually
Absolutely.
doesn't probably go over with consumers too well.
Well, and the
No.
other thing with a product such as yours, Leila, is education's always going to be paramount, not only because there might be noise out there to the contrary or that's incorrect, but you also have a certain percentage of young women kind of aging into the potential user group every year, right? As
Mhm.
people move along in their stages of life. So let's talk about going to retail, because generally, and you might say, Bruce, it was that way here too, but that's why we're talking about it. Generally RX to OTC switches are pretty big news, and
Yes.
retailers tend to jump behind them. And Tracy and I were involved together on one way back in the day at Bear and working out the drop shipping. And this was back when that was like men from Mars. Now people are used to that. But when you guys were getting ready to do this, what kind of internal discussions might you have had about which, brick and mortar retailer you really wanted to go to first? Or, gosh, if we can get these guys on board, other stuff's going to be so much easier. Or was it like most RX to OTC switches, you guys rang the bell and almost everybody lined up?
We were treated like most RX to OTC switches. I think there was, perhaps because it was a first in class switch, even more excitement. However, and the whole point of switch is accessibility. It's creating access. It's you want to be everywhere because you're trying to provide the consumer with this incredible benefit and this unfettered access that they haven't had before. So retailers do roll out the red carpet when you are working on an RX to OTC switch. That makes the sell-in smoother and pretty nice. I have worked on businesses before where that was not the case, and you're just sitting there praying to the distribution gods that they don't cut your assortment down, and just trying to explain why you need to remain on shelf. That's not the case here. However, what I will say is that for Opill, the drug class of trade, so think CVS, Walgreens, et cetera, they were very much a primary focus. And that's not because we think somebody going into a drugstore deserves this more than somebody going into mass or grocery. It's because if you think about the category and where people's heads go, it's to drug. It's, you've got the barrier method, which is just a fancy way to say condoms. You've got emergency contraception. So think, brands like Plan B. And when you're in those moments where you're purchasing from those categories, your brain goes to drug. And so that's why it was at the forefront of this launch from a retailer perspective. We knew that we needed to nail it with the drug channel, but that the other channels would follow. And like I said, I was walking that red carpet and it felt pretty good.
Do you still have a fairly significant piece of your business coming in directly through your website, or is most of it now, whether it's Amazon or more traditional brick and mortar, woman needs the product, she walks into XYZ retailer and buys it, or do you still see a lot of sales coming in through your website?
I would say our sales are pretty well spread out. I think the interesting piece of note here in terms of where our sales are coming from is that we disproportionately see sales coming from e-commerce versus brick and mortar on this.
Hmm.
Now, I would argue that within Perigo, which is huge, we play in a lot of categories in the OTC world, we have the highest percentage of our sales coming from e-commerce. And that includes Opill.com, Amazon.com, and our retailer.com across the board. And that's for a couple of reasons. One, this category skews younger. So we're really focused on speaking to digital natives. That's where their comfort level lies. But there's also an element of privacy in the contraception space where it's like you don't necessarily want everybody knowing your business. So you can get it shipped to you in, an Amazon box or an unbranded box from Opill.com, and it can remain discreet.
So one other question before we move off of this, Leila. Um, when this product launched, or has it evolved to, we've all been the recipients of phone calls from retailers where they say, hey, yours is a high theft item. So either we're going to put it behind the counter or we're going to put it in like the plexiglass of the NHL penalty box. Were you guys classified as high theft? Have you had any of those other consumer barriers put up, or have you been able to kind of negotiate your way around those?
We've absolutely faced those barriers. We still face barriers at retail, both in terms of the product being locked up in what's considered high theft stores, mostly in the drug channel. But we also face barriers in terms of the advertising capabilities that we have within the retail community because it is classified as a blush category, which means that it's a sensitive category. There's still remains, unfortunately, a lot of uneasiness around this whole category amongst the retailer community. So we are not able to fully support it from an omni-channel perspective and the way that you could support a jar of peanut butter.
Right.
And those are battles that we still diligently fight.
Yeah,
We all do.
Yeah.
absolutely. So early on in our conversation, we talked a little bit about partnerships, but talk to our audience a little bit about what other tactics, marketing tactics you use to drive awareness and product and its availability. And then the second part of that is, how do you evaluate those programs?
Mhm. So, of course, our partnerships and the community building we've done play a huge role in driving awareness. Um, Outside of that piece, we do have a full funnel paid media plan in place. And what that means is that we're ensuring that we're investing at each stage of the funnel, awareness, consideration, conversion, so that once we tell people about it, that we're giving them the tools, the education that they need to be able to get their questions answered, determine if the product is right for them or not, and then to purchase. Outside of social media, which is again plays a huge role, I would say another big awareness driver for us is influencer. So working across both HCP, which stands for healthcare providers, and consumer influencers. They're helping to drive awareness because they've got their audiences, so they're broadcasting this to their audiences, but they're also actually very powerful education vehicles, especially the healthcare providers. So the OBGYNs we worked with, nurse practitioners, sex therapists, they're seen as credible sources, and that's great. And we've even done like Ask Me Anything. So we're engaging with our audience and they can, again, safe space to ask us whatever questions they might have, whether that be about Opill or reproductive health. Additionally, we look at channels like digital out of home. So I've talked about our efforts on campus. College students are a big consumer segment for us. So making sure that, as they're walking around on or near their campuses, they're getting those digital out of home, they're just like the digital billboards or things you might see above the train stops or bus stops, et cetera, making sure that we're present with very vibrant, clear, branded communications there. And that's been a powerful awareness driving tool for us as well. And then as we think about our paid media plan, I mean, we're spending time in places like connected TV. So that would be Disney Plus, Netflix. For those in our audience that are Love Island fans, you may be seeing Opill pop up on your screen this season. So making sure that we're investing not only in the channels that will help to drive that broad awareness, but that we're really focused on spending time and investment in the places where we know our audience is spending that time. But the other piece of it too is, from our good friend Byron Sharp, How Brands Grow, the physical availability. Our box, our packaging, I'm sure you've seen it. I hope if you're listening to this and you haven't, look us up. It's Opill_OTC or Opill.com. It's fun, it's vibrant, it breaks through its shelf. So if you're walking down the aisle at Target, I mean, that's great awareness driving for us. It's
Sure.
it's very important to us to have both the mental availability that we're building through our partnerships, our media investments, our social channels, but also the physical availability. So when we launched, we were in Costco. That was, I mean, the Reddit threads that were going on about that. I mean, that was huge awareness driving in and of itself. And that wasn't fueled by us. People were just excited and naturally talking about it.
Right. That's interesting. And so lately we've had a couple of guests on that talk a lot about TikTok. So I'm just curious, what percentage of your social media are you using TikTok, and and how is that working as a platform for you?
The largest chunk of our investment is in TikTok, but interestingly enough, we see consumers spending time across social channels. They're not just concentrated on TikTok. So what I would say is what we've learned over the 2 years, I think we originally really heavied up on TikTok, which is helpful, but it is a lot harder to break through on that platform than it is on some of the others where they're still spending time. And an example of that would be Snapchat. The Gen Zers, the youths, as I love to refer to them, many of them leverage Snapchat not just to send photos or videos of what they're doing to their friends, but they use it as their primary texting platform, not just, iMessage. And uncovering insights like that have helped us to become more strategic and what I would say more authentic and subtle in our communications and how we're interacting with them. TikTok is noisy. There's a lot going on there. It is important. That's not to say it's not. And we do invest still very heavily. I would say the percent of the total social media budget is still the highest with TikTok. But we're seeing stronger engagement and interaction through other platforms. So I look at TikTok almost as more just like to garner the impressions versus the engagement rates and the more meaningful interactions that we're having with consumers.
It's really interesting because as we talk to different brand founders and even some of the digital agencies, everyone's a little bit different. Like some people are like, man, Amazon's big, but I can't move the needle anymore. And then it's like TikTok's the daddy. And then it's this. It gets lost in TikTok. Well, the interesting thing is, Tracy and I are in advanced negotiations for Love Island to become a sponsor of the Road to Retail. It's not quite as sexy as Love Island, but, we're there. So, Leila, what piece of advice would you give an entrepreneur who walks up to you at a meeting and says, hey, I'm thinking of starting a CPG brand. So, given your background and how diverse it's been, what would you tell them, and how might you put a twist on that to that man or woman if it was a somewhat complicated product such as Opill? Like, what are it's like, hey man, you really got to nail A and B.
I would say to them, if you're going to start a brand, you have to be beyond crystal clear on how you're uniquely serving your consumer. It is not enough to exist, to have vibrant breakthrough packaging, to whatever, the founder story. That's not enough. You really need to be clear on what you're seeking to deliver them and how it's uniquely benefiting the consumer versus anything else that they can get. That is step one, because you can have the best branding in the entire world, but if you don't have that clarity on what you're delivering or your product doesn't deliver, it's going to fall apart. And you can have the best product in the world, but if it's not positioned clearly or appropriately and people don't understand the value or the benefit that they're getting from it, no one will give it the time of day. So you really need to start there. As it pertains to Opill, and the complexity, I would say it's almost less about the brand itself, but the people behind that brand. You need to have a very thick skin and be incredibly persistent, to fight some of the challenges and complexities and what I'll say uphill battles that we have had and continue to fight on Opill and reproductive health more broadly. It really boils down to, like, are you willing to take this on? Because you're going to be told no, 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 no. And then finally you'll get that yes, or you'll get that maybe, et cetera. And you have to have that persistence, that determination, in order to make it in this space in particular.
So what's interesting there about what you said, Leila, Tracy and I have covered some meetings for at various industry groups, whether it's CHIPA, NACDS, or some of the ECRM. And at the Founders Innovation Day last December in New York, every retailer that came to the stage basically had a derivative of what you just said. They said, listen, at some point, you need way more than just a great founder story.
Yeah.
You need data. You need to know who your audience is. You need to know why you're different. You need to know your price is correct. Can people find your package on the shelf? You know, it's cool that it was designed by your 12-year-old daughter when you were only doing farmers markets, but what about now? Okay. That was a great answer. Tracy.
Yes. Absolutely. So rounding third and heading home here, Leila, tell us who's had the greatest influence on your career and why.
Don't have to name names, but maybe what these people did for you.
Okay. This is an interesting question. There have been a lot of people that have inspired me, especially in the past 3.5 years working on Opill. But the person who has had the most profound impact on my career, at the risk of sounding cliche, and I'm going to share a little bit more, is my father. And it's not because I'm like, oh, my parents are the best. My parents are the best. But my father in particular has a unique story. He's a Palestinian refugee. He came to the US to go to school. He graduated from Harvard with a PhD. And you might think, oh, the typical American dream. But what's interesting about his career, his life, is that he has dedicated it to bringing or attempting to bring peace to the Middle East, which is a huge, massive undertaking and obviously still ongoing. But
so suddenly selling Opill's easy.
right,
Yeah.
right. Like,
Yeah.
it really puts things in perspective sometimes too, especially when I was in the food world. And this is not to say that food isn't important. Of course it is. And I spent many years working in that space and I love it. But it's like, all right, let me take a beat here. I'm talking about a biscuit. Like, this is not
Yeah.
life or death.
I'm talking about the Pillsbury Doughboy.
Yeah, and he's so freaking cute. I
And he's on
love seeing
GLP-1s
him
now.
more.
He's offended when he's called Doughboy. He
Yeah.
wants to be called Ripped Boy.
Ripped boy. He's not
Yeah.
as cute if he's ripped. But yeah, my going back to my dad, I when I was a little girl and as I was in school and trying to figure out what I wanted to be when I grew up. I mean, aren't we still kind of trying to figure out what we want to be when we grow up?
Absolutely. Bruce is still trying to figure it out, and so am I.
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
going to
It's
play
like
for
we
the
never,
Knicks.
yeah, yeah. Um, there were just some qualities or characteristics that he embodied that I always admired. And they were qualities like tenacity and ambition and determination, persistence. I have never seen someone speak truth to power in the way that my dad has throughout his career. He's technically retired, but he's not retired. I mean, in a really big, powerful way that impacts people's lives. And I've always admired those things about him and then realized that I, in fact, now believe that I embody those characteristics. And I've had to work on Opill and to maintain my composure in some moments, but to continue fighting the good fight because I realize that it's bigger than just me. I'm not doing this because it looks good on LinkedIn. This and you know, at the start of the podcast, I said this has had a profound impact on my life, personally and professionally. And so just the grit and determination that he taught me and deploying that as I think about the women and the people who can get pregnant in this country that I'm serving day in and day out. And I don't know, it might not be as big as peace in the Middle East, but it does feel very important to what's happening in our country and helps me sleep at night.
Yeah, but what's interesting is that the tenacity and things like that you're talking about, you know, it's always easy to surrender and give
Yes.
up. And sometimes I think you just said take a beat. Sometimes you do have to be like, okay, am I going to go to the wall here or am I going to take a break and come back in a day and say, I'm not sure I was clear. This is why I'm thinking. So good for you. All right, Leila, this is a vital topic. Who is your favorite band, brand, or sports team, and why do you support them? And you can't say Indiana. You already did that.
Yeah.
Well, I also love the Arizona Wildcats. Um, we can't forget them. I'm going to go off script a little bit here, and I'm
Okay.
going to share a brand that I wouldn't say is my favorite. I actually don't personally um, love this brand. It's not part of my wardrobe. However, I very much respect their strategy. I think they kick ass, and that is Crocs.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, now I'm not sporting a Croc like my 3-year-old niece. She sports her purple sparkly Crocs like it's nobody's business. But their strategy is bar none. It is excellent. And it's interesting because everyone knows what a Croc is, right? It's a very unattractive but comfortable shoe. And they really leaned into that and embraced who they were. They were clear, like, this is the benefit we deliver. We're going to lean into this. People make fun of us, and we're going to just do this alongside them. We're going to lean into this ugly aesthetic, but we're going to build a community around it. We're going to have these collaborations and partnerships with, people like Bad Bunny and Justin Bieber, and we're going to then partner with fashion houses like Balenciaga, or even getting into the OTC-ish space a little bit with their Touchland partnership, and they made these like pretty cute cases actually. So they're really connecting with people on a personal way and leaning into who they are and not trying to be something that they're not. And I think that the way that they've built that community and the unexpected partnerships that they've had are similar to Opill. and what we've been doing in terms of how we've built our community and how we've been partnering with different groups across the board so that we are making those connections with people and building those fun, interesting, lasting memories.
So it's interesting you said them because Crocs came out, absolutely smoked initially. Then they had a near-death experience. So what I don't know is did they have to turn over a bunch of management or did they have an offsite that actually worked? And they said, okay, we're in the ditch. Where have we gone wrong? And then they got their act together and they're cooking again, which is good. So
Yeah.
Leila, thank you so much for your time today. How can people get in touch with you or learn more about Opill? What's the best way to learn more about your product and perhaps reach out to you directly if they wanted to?
Yes. Well, you can find me on LinkedIn, Leila Bahbah. But if you want to learn more about Opill, I would encourage people to go to our socials, Opill_OTC. Any comment or direct message that you send us is answered by a real person on my team. And Opill.com is a great resource. We've got the site set up for both consumers, for healthcare providers, and in English and Spanish. Everything we do is also in Spanish. So that's the best way to find us. Give us a follow, TikTok, Insta, Facebook, wherever you like to spend your time. Because we post not only educational content, but also entertaining content.
Well, that would be fantastic. Well, we sure appreciate your time today. This has been a fantastic discussion and unlike any of the others that we've had. So thank you
Yes.
very much. All
Yeah,
right, Tracy,
absolutely.
the big finish. Bring it
The
home
big-
for Leila.
Absolutely, Leila. Thank you again so much for joining us today. And audience, thank you for joining us. Please continue to follow us on all of our social channels, like Opill.com or like Opill. But anyway, on our Instagram, we also do Spotify and Apple Podcast. We post every Tuesday on LinkedIn. And then you can also access all of our episodes on our website, which is road2retail.com. So thank you again, Leila, for joining us. And thank you, audience. I hope you enjoyed our show today.
Good luck out there, folks.